empty. To the optimist, the glass is half full. Why would the same measure affect people two different ways? Answer: it all depends on how you look at it. Our lives are mostly affected by the way we think things are, not the way they are.
Now, I'm going to demonstrate this to you very graphically here, and I want you to pay attention over here, if we could, to the monitor, and we're going to bring up a sentence on this monitor.
You change your altitude.
As Emerson said, you become what you think about most of the time. Earl Nightingale, in his Strangest Secret of Success, simply said that you become what you think about all day long. In computer language, they have an expression, GIGO, which means garbage in, garbage out. But it also means good in, good out. Now, if the human being was like an animal, and that we were programmed permanently and could never change our instincts and our responses, then we would have no hope. But the good news is that everything that we have learned, we can unlearn. That everything that has been programmed into us can be deprogrammed and can be overridden with new programming.
Programming your mind for success. You know that a computer, if you program a computer, it simply operates on the basis of the computer, on the basis of the programming. If you want to get different results in your outer world, you have to put in a different program for your mental programmer. So this is how we do it. We say your self-concept is your bundle of beliefs inside that determines everything that happens to you. Remember, all change begins with a change in your self-concept, the way you see yourself and think about yourself and believe about yourself. There was a man many years ago, very famous, true story. His name was Victor Sarabriakov. And Victor Sarabriakov was the parent of immigrant laborers who came over from Russia. And he grew up and he went to school, and he seemed to float through school. He did whatever schoolwork was necessary, but he daydreamed a lot, and sometimes he read other things and looked out the window. And they concluded that he was probably mentally retarded, he had learning deficiencies, wasn't really set up to be very successful. And so he went all the way up to the 10th, 12th grade, and he was still looking out the window, and he sat down with his counselor in the 12th grade, and they suggested that he join the Army. Because in the Army, he could get a nice job where they would provide for him for 25 or 30 years, and then he could have a nice pension, and he could retire, and he would be safe and secure. And he didn't think much about that, so he left school and he drifted, and he worked as a farm laborer. 2 years later, he'd been drifting around. He's now about 20 years old. He saw a sign, you know, the Army needs men. And he remembered the recommendation from his guidance counselor in high school. So he went in and he applied. So he went in to enlist, and they said fine. And his background was average grades in high school and labor for 2 years. Not great Army material. So they gave him a battery of psychological and intelligence tests. When they came back with the test, his IQ scored at 172. And they said, no, there's something wrong here with this test, this score. So they tested him again. They had him take the test again, came out at 176. His IQ was higher than Einstein's of 170. They couldn't believe it. They took him in and they sat him down, and they said, Mr. Sarabriakov, you're one of the smartest. You're the smartest person who's ever tried to enlist in the Army. And he said, yeah, but I got terrible grades throughout school. And they had a psychologist there, and he said, well, it's because you basically have a photographic memory. You memorized everything there was to learn in school. The instant it was first mentioned, it was completely boring for you. That's why you were looking out the window all the time. He said, that's true. He said, I never failed an exam because he learned everything like a sponge absorbs water. They said, Mr. Sarabriakov, if you'll join the Army and you'll go into our nuclear physicist training, we will put you through university if you will stay in the Army for 4 years after your degree. And he said, sounds good to me. When his time was up at 30, he started his own company, which is in Los Angeles, and Sarabriakov Industries. Within something like 2 years, he had 6 major high-tech patents, each of which was sold and licensed for millions of dollars. By the time he was 35, he still lives in Los Angeles today. He's worth millions and millions of dollars, one of the brightest people that they'd ever seen in terms of his creative ability. But he didn't know. He'd been programmed from his poor parents and his childhood and the teachers that paid no attention to him to believe he was not very smart. And when they finally showed him how smart he was, he just changed his programming. When he changed his programming, this guy became a mental machine. He was a genius of the highest order. So it's very possible for us to change all of our external results by changing our programming about ourselves. So programming your mind for success, the psychology of becoming says that you are in a constant state of becoming. Each one is in a continuous state of growth and change. And you're continuing moving forward, and you're growing and changing depending upon the information that you're taking in. Now, the great tragedy is that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if you're continually taking in the same old information, whether it's frivolousness or television set or TV or Twitter or something else, if you just keep taking the same thing and keep hanging out with the same people and reading the same papers, then nothing will change. The natural tendency is to just go on forever. But if you start to take in new information and new ideas and read new things and talk to new people, you start to evolve and grow in a different way, in a different direction, and at a different speed. So we say if you want to evolve and grow more rapidly, you must make your goals clear and describe them in detail. The interesting thing is, as soon as you are absolutely clear that you want to achieve a particular goal, you start to get all kinds of ideas to achieve that goal. You start to see all kinds of possibilities. You activate your reticular cortex, and you start to see ideas that can help you everywhere. You start to run into people and meet people. It's really quite astonishing. I remember reading a story of a serial entrepreneur, and he'd made many millions of dollars in different businesses. And one day he was reading the Wall Street Journal, and it said imports of Italian racing bicycles increased 37% in the last 12 months. And that's what it was, just a little thing from one of the Department of Trade publications. So he said, 37% growth rate, that's pretty good. He said, I wonder why that is. So he started to do some research. And what he found was, this is many years ago, is Italian racing bicycles, which is very popular today, were almost unknown in the U.S. He got in touch with the major Italian bicycle manufacturers. He opened a store. He imported the bicycles. He advertised, and they started to sell. By the time he was finished, he had 32 stores selling Italian bicycles by the shipload, and he made something like $15–20 million before he sold the business. It all came from just noticing that little notice. But the thing is, he was looking for the notice. He was looking for business ideas. So when you start to think that you want to make a lot of money, you're going to see opportunities. So keep your mind open, because once you're clear about it, you're going to start to attract opportunities for everything you could possibly accomplish. Now, you must dwell on them most of the time. Remember, you cannot have a goal and think about it once a month. It's just like being married and thinking about your family once a month. It does not really mean you're really committed. So there are two obstacles to becoming everything you are capable of becoming. Obstacle number one is homeostasis. It means that you become rigid and fixed in the way that you think. Homeostasis is another rephrasing of the comfort zone. It's a major reason that people don't grow is because they get locked into what they've already done in the past, and they're very uneasy about doing something new. And you're not willing to try new things. And so be alert to these, the natural tendency to slip into a comfort zone and fight to stay there, and the natural tendency to resist new ideas. In order to get yourself out of the comfort zone, they found that if I like to use an example like this. When Warren Bennis did his study called Leaders, which was one of the best-selling book on leadership of the 90s, they'd studied 93 leaders, and they studied them for 5 years to find out what qualities they had that made them different. And they were completely different industries, and they found there were 5. And one of them was they refused to get stuck in a comfort zone. And so what they did is they would get into a comfort zone. We say the only difference between a comfort zone and a rut is the depth. No, between a rut and a grave is the depth. And when they would get into this comfort zone very quickly, and the only way they could get out is by using a grappling hook, if you like, and throwing a grappling hook up to pull themselves out of the comfort zone, and it was always a big goal. And so what you do is by creating a big goal, you're forced out of your comfort zone because you cannot stay at your current level of performance and set a big goal for yourself. The goal forces you to think bigger, which is why we talked about putting a 0 at the end of your income goal. It forces you. There's no way that you can achieve that doing what you're now doing. You're going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to do it in a different place in a different way. So we say there are 2 great powers that control everything that happens to you. The first is the power of love. The power of love is the greatest power in our lives. It's been said that everything we do is either to get love or to compensate for lack of love. From the time we are children, moving from discomfort toward comfort, from pain toward pleasure. We're always striving to get the unconditional love and affection and respect of the people who are most important to us. And remember I said earlier that we strive for all of our adult life to compensate for what we felt we were deprived of as children. The second great power that controls everything that happens to you is the power of suggestion. And you and I are inordinately suggestive in that we're constantly affected by the suggestive elements in our world. Everything counts. Every single word we hear, every conversation we have, every song we listen to or news story, everything we read has an effect on us, and it's helping us or hurting us. Everything counts. Everything counts. If I were to say to you, geez, there's some great research. It says that if you eat really, really healthy foods, you're going to feel much better and have more energy and sleep better, and your skin will be better, and your digestion will be better, and everything else if you eat really, really good foods. Did you know that? You'd say, come on, give us a break. We've known that for 50 years. We know what we should eat. We just don't eat it because we like delicious things. And really good foods are not always delicious. So, of course, we know that. But if I were to say that everything that you take into your mind affects your personality and your temperament and your self-confidence and your goals and your clarity and your intelligence, it has a profound transforming effect, you'd say, wow, that's an interesting thought. Everything you take into your physical body affects you physically. Everything you take into your mind affects you mentally and emotionally, and it affects the results that you get in life. Number 7 is the law of emotions. We say every decision that you make is based on emotion of some kind. The stronger emotion will dominate a weaker emotion and will determine what you do. In other words, if you have an emotion of desire to become successful in your work, but you have an emotion of fear and insecurity, you don't want to lose your security, whichever emotion is the most intense is the one that will dominate the other. There's a story of the old Indian chief, and he said, I have 2 wolves, he said, on either shoulder. The black wolf on one shoulder is always luring me to do things that are not good for me. And he said, the white wolf on the other shoulder is always encouraging me to do things that are good for me. And the person he was talking to said, which is the wolf that dominates? And he said, the one I feed. The one that I pay the most attention to is the one that dominates my thinking. So you can actually, by continually thinking about what you desire, you actually cause that to become more intense, and you cause the fear that's holding you back to become less and less. And so pretty soon the desire for success, happiness, achievement is much greater than the fears that hold most people back. And you do it little by little, just by dwelling on it over and over. And so that eventually becomes your stronger emotion. So we say the law of expression says, whatever is impressed is expressed. This comes from Aristotle, by the way, the law of expression. In other words, whatever you take in to yourself, you read, listen to, talk about, and so on, you express in your life and your conversation. You can always tell what's going on inside a person by listening to their conversation, because they're always expressing what they're thinking about. So whatever is impressed is expressed. So be very careful that you impress into your mind only really positive things, because those are what will be expressed. And you only want to be expressing really positive, healthy thoughts. So number 9, the law of reversibility. This is one of the great laws. And what it says is this, is if you achieve a certain level of success or good health or happy relationships, that accomplishment will create a subjective state, a feeling or emotional state that goes with it. In other words, if you win something, you feel like a winner. And you act like a winner, you get the emotion of winning from the act itself. But what happens is the objective reality, the fact of success, creates the subjective state or the emotion. And this is what we say, so that if you are a winner, you feel like a winner. But if you are not, haven't been a winner, if you create the feeling, just think how you would feel if you succeeded in this area. And you start to think and create a visual picture of yourself succeeding. So the principle of reversibility says if you really feel great about yourself, you'll behave in a great way. But if you don't feel in a great way, you can create the feeling within yourself, or you can act your way into feeling. You can act like you're already successful and you create the feeling. Or you can feel that you're already successful and it will create the action. So it's really important. This law of reversibility goes back and forth. What William James of Harvard says, that if you do not have an emotion, but pretend as if you already do have the emotion, You'll experience the emotion that would go along with the success. So we say, imagine that you have your goal already. Imagine that you're already at your goal. Get the feeling. Create the feeling as though you were already a big success, as though you're already successful, as though you already were achieving what you achieved, and then replay and recreate that feeling over and over again. And the law of practice says that whatever you do over and over again, often enough becomes a new habit. So you can develop new habit patterns of thought and action just simply by repetition. Every habit you have today was by repetition, so you can cancel the old habits and start new ones. A new habit takes about 21 days to develop. So follow a 21-day positive mental attitude diet and resolve that for 21 days you're only going to think and talk about what you want, and you're not going to think and talk about things that you don't want. Your goal is to become a purely positive person so that you're just positive all the time. And if you have a setback or an obstacle that causes you to become upset or angry, you bounce back quickly. My friend Charlie Jones used to say, it's not how far you fall, but how high you bounce that counts. And so what you do is you just pre-program yourself, and this is one of the great pre-programmings that I learned, is that no matter what happens, I will respond to it in a positive way. You need 4 qualities to make great changes in your personality and your character. Quality number 1 is desire. The only real limit on what you can accomplish is the question, how badly do you want it? Many people think, well, I want to be this and I want to be that, and I want to be rich and I want to be thin, and I want to be successful and I want to be happy and I want to have a great relationship or marriage. But people in mental institutions have the same wishes. These are not goals, they're just fleeting wishes. I call them cigarette smoke goals. They just disappear in the air. Because then they want to go party and they want to go drinking, they want to go have fun with their friends, and they want to tweet, and they want to waste time at work and so on. So they want all of these conflicting things. The achievement of one, the time wasters, makes it impossible to achieve the others that are worthwhile. They want to eat whatever they can eat, they want to live without exercising and so on. So the question is, how badly do you want it? And if you really want it badly enough, then what happens is you stop doing the things that are contradictory to it. Decision. You must be willing to do whatever is necessary to achieve your goal. Now, I have to give you a word, and this is one of the great words, and it comes from about a 30-year study. And I said, what is the difference between successful people and failures? And the conclusion was willingness. Now, willingness means that successful people are willing to do whatever is necessary to achieve the goal. They said unsuccessful people are willing to do many things, but just not everything. They're willing to work hard, but not stay late. And they're willing to work during the week, but not on the weekends. And they're willing to upgrade their skills, but they don't want to take time away from reading the sports pages and watching the football game. And they're willing to exercise, but they don't really like to sweat too much, you know. So they're like really gentle exercises, like getting up from the couch and getting back down again. So decision. Make a decision and then be willing to do whatever is necessary within law. I'm not saying be dishonest, but be willing to pay the price. Be willing to pay the price. Discipline is the master key to riches. And this is really the most important key of all, is the ability to discipline yourself to do it whether you feel like it or not. To just keep on keeping on until it becomes a habit. But remember this, wherever you are today, you've gotten here by the things you have done or failed to do in the past. Wherever you want to go in the future, there's no limit because you can control it. And when you start to practice self-discipline, which Napoleon Hill called the master key to riches, when you start to practice self-discipline, it becomes easier and easier. And here is the great discovery, is that every act of self-discipline raises your self-esteem and your self-confidence. Every act of self-discipline deepens your persistence and your determination. Every act of self-discipline makes you stronger and more confident in yourself. When you practice self-discipline, you actually build yourself as a person. And that's why you find that the greatest men and women in history have worked on themselves, like working out with weights, to become very disciplined and focused in doing the things that they need to do to be successful. So every step you take toward becoming more disciplined actually raises your self-esteem and self-confidence and makes it easier for you to take the next step. So self-discipline is really the master key to riches. It's the foundation skill that makes everything possible. If you develop discipline, which is a learnable skill, you can accomplish anything in life. You can achieve any physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual goal. And especially you can achieve any financial goal if you just simply develop the disciplines that are necessary to achieve it.
It's very simple. Anybody can do it. if you apply it right now, can change your existence. Listen to me. That's real. If you don't think it's real, I dare you to try it. Write everything you want on a piece of paper. Everything. I don't care. Use your wildest imagination. If you can think it, you can achieve it. Write it on a piece of paper. Read it every morning and every night. Come back here 1 year from today and see how much of that stuff then came true. That's a promise of your God. That ain't no theory I come up with. That's all successful people have. Oprah's on TV for 30 years telling people about vision boards. It's very real. You have to write it. This is a very, very important piece to success. It's a principle of success. Every wealthy person knows this. If you do not have it written down, your chances of it happening is reduced drastically because it's a principle of success. You have to have everything you want written. I don't know nobody wealthy don't have their stuff written on a piece of paper. I don't know nobody.
This is a letter that you wrote to yourself September 2nd, 2010 by Kendall Jenner. Look at this. And I want you to read just what I highlighted, if you don't mind.
Yeah. My goal in life is to become a big-time model and travel to really amazing places. I really hope it happens. Oh, and I'm really excited to read this in the future.
That's the best. The best thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I wrote myself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered, and I gave myself 5 years, or 3 years maybe, and I dated it Thanksgiving 1995, and I put it in my wallet and I kept it there, and it deteriorated and stuff, but then just before Thanksgiving 1995, I found out that I was going to make $10 million on, I think it was Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber, yeah.
The key to success is what is called future orientation. That means top people, top 10% of people, think about the future most of the time. They think about the future most of the time, and they practice a concept used by top people called idealization. They idealize, they imagine they have no limitations, and they imagine you could wave a magic wand and make your future perfect in every way. Well, I teach a program, it's an advanced coaching and mentoring program to business owners. And I tell them that if you come and work with me for 1 year, I will show you how to double your income and double your time off within 12 months. And then what I do is I front-end load the first day of coaching so that they double their income within 30 days. Everybody does it. It's very simple. I hand them out a spiral notebook, like a school notebook, and I say, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to write down 10 goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next 12 months. Write them in the present tense as though they are already a reality. Not I will earn, but I earn. And then at the end of it, write by and have a due date. I earn this amount by this date. I weigh this number of kilos or pounds by this date. I achieve this goal by this date. Now, when you write it down, you engage in what is called a psychoneuromotor activity, which is a 50-cent word, as we say. It's a big word. But what it means is that you see it when you're writing it, you sub-vocalize when you are speaking, you kinesthetically write it, and by doing the handwriting, you actually program it into the hard drive of your subconscious mind. And I've had people do this exercise once, and a year later, they found that list of goals, and they were astonished to find that 8 of the 10 goals had been achieved. I spoke to a gentleman recently, remarkable story. He said, after he had gone through my seminar, he heard me say, write down 101 goals that you want to accomplish in your lifetime. Well, he was about 24, he was struggling, he was poor, he had a used car, no money, unmarried, single, so on. So he went home that weekend, he got a spiral notebook, he wrote down 101 goals. Now, 12 years later, I'm coming back to the same city, Atlanta, Georgia. And so he came to my seminar, and he said, I have to talk to you. He said, because 2 weeks ago, I was going through my papers, and I found that notebook. And I said, there's that notebook I wrote so many years ago. And he took it out, and he said, I wonder how I did. And so he began looking, and he took out a pen, and he began ticking off the 101 goals. So, yes, I achieved that, and I achieved that, and I achieved that. He said, Brian, and he started to cry. He started to shake. He said, Brian, I had achieved all 101 goals in 12 years. One of my goals was to marry a beautiful woman, which I did. To have children, which I do. To start my own business, which I did. To become a millionaire, which I am today. To own a new Mercedes, which I have. To put my children in private schools, which I did. To travel around the world, to learn a language, to sing a song, to learn to speak, he said it was unbelievable. He said, not 100, 101 goals had been achieved in 12 years. He said, it was overwhelming to him. He could not believe it because I had told him, if you write them down, it's like programming them into your subconscious mind, where they then begin to work 24 hours a day while you're doing other things. Now here's the key. Do not refer to the previous day. What you do is you turn it over and you rewrite your goals again today. Now here's what will happen. When you first write down 10 goals, they will be the first things that occur to you. The next day, when you write them down without reference, you will change the order. You may actually drop off one or add something else. The wording will change in the goals, which is very important because your subconscious mind is activated by the precision of the words that you use. And so you'll find yourself writing the goals differently and in different order and sequence. And at a certain point, you'll find yourself every morning writing the same 10 goals, like that. And then, one by one, they'll start to be achieved and replaced by a new goal. And a year from now, it's almost like if you decided to exercise and lose weight a little bit each day, a year from now, you could be as fit as an Olympic athlete. A year from now, you will have accomplished so much, it will be astonishing to you. You know, and people say, well, it sounds really good, big American motivational speaker and so on. They say, but what if it doesn't work? I say, no, that's the wrong question. What if it does work? All it costs is a spiral notebook, a pen, and a few minutes a day, maybe 5 minutes. What if it could transform your life, as it has done for millions of other people, with no exceptions, in 56 countries where I've spoken? So if it works for everybody, everywhere in the world, it'll probably work for you. All it takes is 5 minutes a day. And it's really a test of how much you really want those goals, is do you have the discipline to rewrite them every day? If you will do that, that front loads the entire success process. You know, the very act of writing goals raises your self-esteem, it improves your self-image, it increases your self-confidence, and it activates your creative mind. You start to see all kinds of ideas and ways to achieve the goals that you've written. It's so powerful, it's literally life-changing, that one technique. But I have never written a goal that I didn't achieve. And I've gone from literally from rags to riches, from being broke to being worth an enormous amount of money. And it was exactly what I wrote down. the car, the home, the family, the business, everything I wrote down eventually came true. And everybody I speak to says it all comes true eventually.